This video response is going to go out to Mark Ballenger, and that's because you uploaded a video. I wish I could read the title of the video in this particular video, but you know how the YouTube censors are. They wouldn't like that very much. So I am going to go ahead and leave a hyperlink to your video right down here in the description below. Anyway, I watched your entire video, and I decided to give you some commentary about your video because I watched the whole thing. Now, first of all, you have an interesting logic concerning this topic, but there are a few details that I think you missed. So I will interject these specific details that I think you overlooked. Okay? The people Paul was addressing were for the most part illiterate. Today, most people in the United States are, for the most part, very literate. But many young people in the United States today don't possess highly profitable employment skills. Okay, back in their day, they did. Today, not so much. So even though they're more literate than they used to be, in today's society, try to find people that know a lot of carpentry or plumbing or anything like that. It's a lot harder. Well, I won't say a lot, but it is harder to find people these days with really good skills. Unlike yesterday, even the employers are having a hard time finding decent workers with those kind of skills. And don't tell me that didn't happen. Just talk to them, and they'll tell you. They have a harder and harder time every year trying to find people like that. So, anyway. Alright. Fortunately, I addressed this issue on my YouTube channel. If you ever want to look through my videos, you are more than welcome to do so. I hope you do, and I hope you share it with everybody. Alright. The people Paul was addressing also lived in an agrarian society. Do we live in an agrarian society? Well, some of the people here in the United States actually do, but there are a lot of people in the United States that don't live in an agrarian society. They don't live on farms like they did back then. Okay? In the days of Paul, land ownership was very important. Today, not so much. Okay? So, land ownership for people in the United States is not as much of a priority as it was way back in the days of Paul. Also keep in mind that modern photography didn't exist during the first century. So lusting after a lady back in those days was a literal insult to the neighbors of the person who was lusting. It's true. And keep in mind that marriages back then were arranged. This is not the case in the United States today. As a matter of fact, in the United States today, if guys, and I have to say this because I've seen this so many times, if guys are not practicing regular chastity, yeah, they can get themselves a heck of a lot of trouble. And I can cite several cases where that happens, but I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, guys practicing chastity today is a lot more important than it was back in Paul's day. And that's what I got to say about that. Anyway, the people that Paul was addressing grew up in an era where parents would train their children on their job skills. For instance, if someone in a village back in Paul's day was a carpenter, their children would most likely become carpenters. Many children in the United States today are not forced to learn the skills their parents have. So if someone in the United States is a carpenter, then it's probably unlikely, but not impossible, obviously, but it's not highly likely that any or all of their children will become carpenters. That's a fact. So there are a lot of differences between first century Judea and Paul's audiences and what we have today. Paul was also addressing a crowd whose wives and daughters didn't have the right to vote or own property or do much of anything else. They didn't have a whole lot of rights, period. These ladies were far more dependent on gentlemen than ladies that live in the United States today are. Okay, so the ladies that lived back in the first century were a lot more dependent on gentlemen than ladies of the modern day era. So that makes a big difference in your argument. Alright? So applying your reasoning to citizens of the United States today is going to be a tough sell. Okay? Because you're dealing with two different societies. Remember, some United States citizens don't even place a high value on conceiving children, raising children, or even getting married at all. They just don't. To them, a marriage license is like a little piece of paper. You sign it, and 5 years later, you dump the spouse. I didn't see any of that being addressed in your video. Are these topics ever raised in churches in the United States today? I'm sorry to say that I have been in several churches, and rarely are any of these topics that I have discussed in this video ever been brought up in those churches. Oh, once in a while you hear about it, but not very much. Really, you'd be surprised. So I would like to see your feedback on all of this. This would be interesting to see. So if you want to give me any feedback, you want to make a video, or you want to just leave a comment, feel free to do so. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so I'd like for you to stay tuned.